Hello YouTube viewers, hope you're all doing good. Welcome to this video. I'm Venkat and this is just me, an open source channel. Right, in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to set up a Kubernetes cluster, how to run your Kubernetes cluster entirely in Docker containers. Right, when I started learning Kubernetes, I used virtual machines and then I moved on to Linux containers because they are lightweight compared to virtual machines. You don't have to run the hypervisor. So basically I'll be creating clusters, I'll be deleting them, I'll be playing with all sorts of configurations. So I need a quick way to bring up the cluster and destroy them in my development machine. So virtual machine took some time to provision the cluster, and it's kind of overhead because I couldn't install more virtual machines to create more worker nodes. So I then moved to Linux containers. Was working very well. I'm still using Linux containers, but recently I started exploring um, Kind, Kubernetes in Docker. So I was reading an article and then I came across this topic, Kind. So running your entire Kubernetes cluster in Docker containers. So um, I couldn't believe that you could run your entire cluster in a Docker containers, but it's possible. So that's what I'm going to be showing you in this video. So Kind. Um, so to set up Kind, you need two dependencies, just two dependencies. One is you have to install the Go tools, Go language tools, and then obviously Docker. You need Docker. Okay, so if you go to YouTube, I've already done a video on how to install Docker. I've shown it in various distributions, CentOS, Ubuntu, Arch Linux. So installing Docker, you've got tons of videos in YouTube. You can find that. But if you want to follow my video, you can search installing Docker few simple steps. So the first video here, how to install Docker, you can follow that to get Docker installed on your machine, whether you're using Ubuntu, Arch Linux, or CentOS, or any other distribution. So follow that and get Docker installed. So that's the important step. Once you install Docker, add your user to the Docker group, log out, log back in, so that you can run Docker commands without prefixing sudo. Okay, so now we got to install the second dependency, second requirement, which is Go language tools. Okay, so go to Golang, search for Golang download, and golang.org. So that's the website. So you got to go and download that. So for Linux, we've got this one, Linux. I'm going to copy the URL and I'm going to download that. Okay, so that's downloaded and I'm going to extract that. So I'm going to extract that into /user/local. If you happen to use Arch Linux, there is a package in the repository. So you can install sudo pacman -s go, that will install the Go tool. But if you're on Ubuntu, CentOS, Fedora, or even in Arch Linux, if you want to extract the sources, you can do that. So now we're going to extract that tar -zxf go and -uppercase C to user local. So I'm going to extract the tarball into the user local. Obviously, I need to prefix sudo. Okay, so now it's getting extracted under /user/local. So that's all you need. And if I look at /user/local, you have the Go directory here. And inside the Go directory, there is bin directory, and you need to put that in your path. So export path equals $path:/user local go/bin. Okay, so now if I do which go, user local go bin go. So you've got that in the path. But if you want to make it permanent, you can put it in etc profile, depending on which shell you're using. You could put that in your .bashrc, .zshrc, or so on. So that's one requirement. We've installed Go, and now we are good to install Kind, setup Kind. So let's search for Kubernetes Kind. And here it is, Kubernetes-6/kind. If you go in there, okay, so in here, there's a single command that you need to run. Okay, let's copy that. Copy and paste it. There is a second command, kind create cluster. So I'll come to that a little later. So that's all you need. Okay, so it's going to take a minute or two to download all the dependencies, all the files it needs. It should be ready in a few seconds. All right, so we are good to go now. Okay, just to stop us from being distracted, I'm gonna open up another tab. Okay, so if you do ls now, there is this go directory. So once you run that command, there's a go directory that gets created on the directory that you are in when you run that command. So we don't need that tar file, so I'm going to delete that. Okay, so there is go here, which kind. So kind is the command that you will use to create the cluster, to destroy the cluster, all sort of interactions. So it's like kubectl. So kind is not found. So kind is actually under the go directory. ls go bin. So there's kind there. You could move kind to user local bin if you want, or you can add this to your path. So if you want to add this to your path, export path equals dollar path colons home directory go slash bin. So now if you do which kind, kind is in your path now. So again, you need to put that in your bash rc file or etc profile, wherever you want, to make sure that it's in the path. So kind is there. If I do kind version 0.4.0, if you open if you download the previous version, for example, if you go here, tags, so 0.4.0 is the current version as of recording this video. There is 0.3.0. Depending on which one you choose, there will be different versions of Kubernetes cluster. So 0.4.0 got released a couple days ago, and it comes with Kubernetes 1.15, which is what I want. Okay, so what we can do with kind help, it lists some of the commands. So the one we are interested in is create, delete. That's it. So basically, I use only those two commands, create and delete. Okay, so kind create. If you want help for the subcommand, you can do kind help create. So you get the usage, creates one of the local Kubernetes cluster. Okay, so kind create cluster minus minus help. So if you want to create a cluster, you can pass certain options. You can pass minus minus name so that the cluster will be named whatever you give for this option. Or if you don't, the default name is kind. Okay, so let's try a default cluster. Let's first try to create a cluster. So if I do docker ps, there is no docker at the moment. Sorry, there is no docker containers running at the moment. So I'm going to create a cluster, kind create cluster. That's it. I'm going to press enter. So as you can see here, creating cluster kind. So that's the name. That's the default name. If you pass minus minus name, it will get that information. Ensuring node image. At this point, it downloads the Docker image version 1.15, and then it prepares the node. So there's one node icon, and then it creates the kube adm config file. It is now starting the master control plane. Soon it will be ready. So at the moment, it seems that it's going to create just one node cluster, which is a master node. And once it's complete, we can see how we can add multiple worker nodes and so on. Okay, so the command has completed. As you can see, it has done various steps. Okay, let me close this window for a while. Kubectl cluster info. So before you can interact with your cluster, you need to configure your kube config file. So as part of kind create cluster, it has created a kube config file which you need to export. So it has given the command for us which we need to do. So it's export kube config. It's the same command as it's shown here. And if we do that, you also need to download the kubectl binary for your host machine. So I've got kubectl. I've copied to user local bin kubectl. Okay, so ls.kube. So it has created the config file kind-config-kind. So that's the kube config file. that gets created as part of kind create cluster. And when you destroy this cluster, this file is going to be deleted. Okay, so our configuration is all set up. And if you want to know where your config is created, you can do kind get kube config path. So that will tell you where the current configuration file for the current cluster is. Okay, so we're all good to go. Let's do kubectl cluster info. Okay, there you go. Our Kubernetes cluster is ready. And as you can see here, it's on port 39277. Okay, so Docker PS. So there's one Docker container, which is the node version 1.15. And it's listening on port 6443. And we've got a Docker proxy to 39277 on our local host. So that's the port. We have it here. And if you look at the kube configuration, you have the server set to localhost 39277, which means 39277 is forwarded to 6443 on the Docker node. Okay, cool. So let's do kubectl get nodes. So we have one master node which is ready. Kubectl get nodes -o wide. It has got the Ubuntu Disco Dingo base image. Yeah, it's all looking good. Container D, and it has got an internal IP address. Okay, kubectl version --shot, all looking good. Kubectl -n kube system get all. Okay, so it's a proper Kubernetes cluster, but with single master node. So if you want to add additional worker nodes, what you got to do is, I'm going to tell you. Okay, first let's delete this cluster. Kind delete cluster. Okay, so it says that cluster has been deleted, but still your kube config, we've exported that variable to kind config kind. So we need to unset that. Unset kube config, and if you do ls.kube, that configuration file has been deleted as part of deleting the cluster. Okay, so that's good. So now if you want to Docker PS, the container is also gone. Okay, so I'm going to bring up my browser here. And if I go to Kubernetes Kind, okay, so now we are trying to add additional worker nodes. Instead of having a single master node, we're going to have a single master node and two worker nodes. So you have to create a configuration file and then pass that configuration file when creating the cluster. Okay, so it should be in the docs somewhere. Docs. If you go to quick start, by the way, I'll paste all these URLs in the description if you want it. If you scroll down, there will be a configuration file. There you go. So that's the configuration file, which I'm going to copy. And I'm going to create a file called kindconfig.yaml. The file can be any name. Okay, so role control plane, role worker, role worker. So if you want any number of worker nodes, you just keep pasting that. So if I copy that and paste it 5 times, so that's going to create how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 worker nodes and 1 master node. Okay, we don't want that many. Okay, so let's go with 1 master node and 2 worker nodes and see how it works. Okay, so now kind create cluster, and you have to pass the --config option and the config file, kindconfig.yaml. Okay, so let me close this browser. So now you can see it's preparing 3 nodes, 1 master node and 2 worker nodes. Again, it's going to take the same amount of time. It will be ready in a couple of minutes. All right, the command is completed, so it has created a cluster for us. And let's check it out. Kubectl get nodes -o wide. Okay, so we have to export the kube config. Export kube config. And now if I do kubectl get nodes -o wide. Okay, cool. So we've got 3 nodes now. All of them are ready. 1 master node and 2 worker nodes. So you can see under roles. So that's master. And we have 2 worker nodes. All of them are from the base Ubuntu Disco Dingo image. So preparing nodes, you can see here there are three nodes it has done. Kube ADM config, it's started the control plane, container networking interface, and then it's installed the storage class, kubectl get storage class, yep, standard. And finally it created two worker nodes, and then it joined them to the cluster. Okay, fine. The cool thing about Docker is, let me show you Docker PS. Okay, so you've got three Docker containers. It's all looking good, and I'm going to delete this cluster again. And then finally unset kube config. Okay. The cool thing about Kind is you can set up a multi-master high availability cluster without any pain. It's just a single command. You just need to tweak the configuration file, and then when you run kube kind create cluster, it's going to set up a multi-master high available cluster with high available HCD. Okay, let's see how to do that. Again, edit the config file. So I'm going to copy the control plane 2p. So now we've got three master nodes and two worker nodes. It's as simple as that. So when it detects more than one master node, it's going to set up whatever it's needed, whatever is required to set up a high available Kubernetes environment. It's going to do that for us. Let's check that out. Kind create cluster minus minus config kind config.yaml. Okay, so it's preparing the nodes. And if you see here, if you count the number of nodes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's trying to create 6 nodes, but in the config file, we mentioned 3 worker nodes and 3 master nodes and 2 worker nodes. So in total, there should be only 5 nodes, but it's trying to prepare 6 nodes. So what's that 6th node? So once the command completes, once the cluster is ready, I'll show you what that 6th node is. So you'll come to know that obviously when you're creating a high available cluster, how would you access your API server? So if you watched my Kubernetes the hard way videos, so you know I've done multi-master setup. So I've got 3 master nodes, and all the API interaction, all the kubectl interaction will be done not to any one of the master nodes. It will be on a load balancer level. So you'll have a load balancer. So that's the 6th node. So it's going to deploy a HA proxy load balancer for us. And all the interactions will be via the load balancer. So all the control plane nodes will be sitting beneath the load balancer. So our interactions, kubectl and the kube admin config file will be pointing to the load balancer. So I'll show that in a minute. All right, the command is completed and our cluster should be ready now. So as usual, we have to export the kube config. Export kube config. The command is given here. So whenever you create a cluster, kind create cluster, you will see the output. It will be the part of the output. So I'm running that. Kubectl. There's also another command that I forgot to mention. So kind get cluster. Sorry, kind get clusters. Yep. So we've got just one cluster. The default name is kind. If you want, you can pass minus minus name, whatever name you want. Kind get nodes. So that's the node control plane 2, plane 3, worker node, worker 2, and the external load balancer. Kubectl get nodes. So now you can see there are 3 master nodes and 2 worker nodes. So these are in a high available environment. So I can show that to you. If I do docker ps, you can see the HA proxy container is sitting here. And if you look at the port it's exposed to, it is 39359. And this HA proxy load balancer will load balance the traffic to the 3 master nodes 1, 2, and 3. So if you look at the port, you can find out 39359, and in VI, if you look at the kube configuration, so make a note of it, 39359, and you can see that here 39359. So our kube configuration knows how to connect to this cluster. So the kubectl command will be connecting to the API server on the load balancer. the load balancer will load balance between these three master nodes. So we've got all the master nodes, and each of these master nodes are running the HCD node as well, HCD container as well. So we've got a high available multi-master Kubernetes cluster. It's as simple as that. kubectl -n kube system get all. So now you can see there's three control plane and three API server, three HCD nodes, and three schedulers. And kube proxy runs on all five nodes. And there is kind net. We've got core DNS. So it's a completely working cluster, no problem at all. So let's try and deploy a sample Nginx application. kubectl run nginx --image nginx replicas 2. Okay, that's done. kubectl get all. Container is getting created. So it's a perfect multi-master high available Kubernetes cluster that you can use. It's entirely based on Docker containers, so you don't have to worry about the system resources. You can create as many containers as possible and as many clusters as possible. So if you want to create multiple clusters in your development environment, if you want to interact between multiple clusters, you can do that. But if you were to use virtual machines, it's going to become hard with the limited amount of CPU and RAM you've got in your workstation or laptop. Okay, cool. I think that's all I wanted to show you. I hope you found this video useful. If you like this video, please share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And Kubernetes and Docker is very interesting and very cool thing if you want to use it in your development environment. It's very lightweight, so feel free to play with it. If you've got any problems, please let me know in comments, and I'll be happy to help you um, whenever you need me. Okay, so thank you so much for your time watching this video today, and I will see you all in another exciting video. Bye bye.